let's get started. All right. So I have to tell you a story that happened last night. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and my daughter was looking at some YouTube clips of me. I was on the news, and she was looking at them, and she said, you know, she looked at it for about 20 seconds and said, "Daddy always talks about boring things." Daddy always talks about boring things. That was, yeah, the usual. And then today, as I was talking to her about what I'm doing today, I said, "I'm introducing a top chef." And she said, "Wow!" Now that's cool. So I heard major cool points with her, you know, even before 8 a.m. So it's a good day. I have to say, this is a real honor to be here kicking off this event. I guess it's the second one. There was a cooking event, which was very popular and well attended as well. So we're continuing a theme, I think. And very happy to be introducing Beverly Kim here today. I'd say before we get started as well, I want to pose to you a very serious question, something that I've been mulling for the last couple of days, which is, if you were a food, what food would that be? What best describes you? Because as we are doing some research on our guest speaker here today, she definitely has a food that would be her, and I'm going to leave it to her to tell you if she wants what that food would be. I was thinking about for me, and I don't know, there's so many, hard to narrow it down. Maybe pizza, I'd say. You know, casual, you can dress it up, you know, various things. So, but be thinking about that very serious question here today. Which food would you be? And we'll kick that off. So, as I said, she was a top chef finalist, and then opened a restaurant here in Chicago called Parachute. A really popular restaurant. There's some buttons on the way out, and just talking to Beverly about the best nights to go, and she told us the best nights. You can ask her about that. And as we were doing some research too, we found out that she has a unique perspective on the industry. She came up as a chef. She was very interested in the profession as an early age, and wrote to many chefs in the Chicago area and got feedback from them. And then as she was doing her research and learning about it, she learned that many of the chefs in this area and really across the country and abroad as well are male. And that's different than what happens generally in many kitchens. So why was that the case? Why was that contradiction in gender roles happening? So that disparity is something that she became interested in. It's something that she's written about and talked about. And that those experiences driven her not only to push herself in her craft, but also to become an advocate for women in the industry. So we are really pleased today to have a guest speaker, Beverly Kim, here with us, who is going to be on a panel discussing matters with our own Christina Tran. So very happy to have both here with us today. So thanks very much.
For that wonderful introduction. Just while she's getting set up, my favorite food, or what I would see myself as food, I would be kimchi. Because I don't know if you're familiar with Korean cuisine, but you wouldn't have a proper meal without kimchi on the table. And it is an acquired taste for a lot of people, but the reason why I feel like it really does represent me, because it's spicy, it's funky, it's unique. So that's who I am.
Thank you, Beverly, for joining us today. So to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how old you were when you became interested in cooking and then knew that you wanted to be a chef?
So, it's really funny because I just bumped into someone from high school here. I went to Downers Grove South High School. And I really started to be interested in cooking because I had a sister who was 9 years older than me. And it was kind of like my junior year. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to focus my college and things like that. She said, "Beverly, you would be a great chef." You know, and she had worked at Chi-Chi's. And she had a friend who went to culinary school. I was like, I don't know anybody I can talk to about that. And like, we never went out to eat as a family because my mom was such a great cook. So we always ate at home. I had no idea what the professional chef life was like. Hence, I went to Barnes & Noble before the day of, Googling and stuff. We went to Barnes & Noble's and I checked out this James Beard Award book, the Who's Who of James Beard. And it listed all the different states in the country. And one of Illinois, there was like 10 or 11 entrees, like people who have been James Beard Award nominated chefs, and maybe 1 or 2 were women. And actually one had passed away by the time I called. And the other one didn't get back to me, but so I was just a little intimidated. I was like, why aren't there any women in this group? But there was one woman who called me back and she said, Fernand Gutierrez is no longer working here, but I'd be happy to answer your questions. And that was Chef Sarah Stegner. She was a James Beard Award winner in 1997. But she let me stage at the dining room at the Ritz-Carlton in 1996. So I did that as a junior. And they had to go through a lot of ropes because you had to technically be 18 to work in a kitchen. So they had to pull a lot of strings for me, but I just fell in love with it immediately. I was never exposed to all the different fragrances, all the different ingredients. It was the first time I saw thyme, rosemary, different kinds of cheeses and rabbits, pheasants, and beets. Like, I grew up in a Korean traditional household with a little speckle of American cuisine in there, And so to me it was fascinating, the colors, the mixture of creativity and precision. Everyone was so serious, like they took it like a craft, And I said, this is way more exciting than studying in a book, textbook, I would rather do this like 15 hours a day than have to read a book and study and stuff like that. So I went the less traditional route, and they recommended that I go to culinary school. I went to Kendall College, which is a local culinary school, and that's kind of how I got my feet wet. That was back in 1996, 97. And you can figure out my age now.
Okay, so after you graduated from culinary school, how many years or at what restaurants were you working at?
So I graduated in 2000, and I worked right after that. I worked again at the Ritz-Carlton. That's where I did my internship. I worked at Charlie Trotter's, which was a 4-star restaurant. I mean, they were all like very high-level restaurants. At Trotter's, it was like 18-hour work days. After a year and a half, I'm like, let me try something new and different. I was kind of burnt out, to be honest. And I worked for catering, J&L Catering, for 2.5 years in Chicago. Then I realized I just missed the restaurant. So I tried a lot of different things, and then I realized I just miss cooking to order. Instead of prepping everything in advance and then heating it up, So I went back to my mentor, Chef Sarah, and I worked for her at Prairie Gas Cafe in Northbrook. I realized that in midpoint through my career, so I was like 25 at that time, and I had already done a sous chef position at that time, management position, that I was really unhappy for some reason, even though I had been cooking. And I realized it's because I never was able to travel and try something different. So I was cooking a lot of European food. And I think when I took a trip to Korea and it came back, it really opened my eyes to really focus on Asian style food, or like something, because it was something I was missing. It's something that I grew up, like some flavors that I was missing. And so from that, I worked at Red Light. And then I moved up the ranks in that company pretty fast. I was the chef de cuisine at Opera, which is a sister Chinese restaurant in the South Loop. Then I became executive chef when I was 27 because the executive chef had left. And so I was like the next best person to take the position. I was really nervous because this guy had literally big shoes. He had big shoes, he was a big guy, and he had a big personality. And I was like the hardest working person, but I was just more timid and just a little bit more, I was always kind of self-doubting, like I wasn't good enough. So I just, it was my first time being an executive chef, was at the Opera restaurant. And then I met my husband of now, and we met, and it was the first time I met anyone who had traveled to Korea as well. And we both dreamt of going back to Korea together. So while we were waiting for the visa, I worked at Takashi's. I don't know if you're familiar with Takashi. He has Slurping Turtle. He was on Top Chef Masters. I worked for him while I was waiting for the visa. Had a shotgun wedding, unplanned first child, and worked at Whole Foods in that meantime to make ends meet. Moved to Cincinnati to help his father open a shop. Then that wasn't working out, and lived in Cincinnati for a year with my son, who was 1 year, and then I got a call from Fairmont Hotel headhunter, a headhunter who was looking for a chef de cuisine to run the Aria restaurant in Chicago, and it was the first time that I was able to get a great salary, you know, and so I had to try out, and they flew me in, I tried out, did a few dishes, and they accepted me. And so we moved up the family back to Chicago, and my husband was the stay-at-home dad, and I was the 90-hour work week mom. And that wasn't really awesome, but I did it because it was good for our family. And then Top Chef happened, and when my son was a year and a half, I took pretty much like 2 months off to do Top Chef and compete, and then another like 3 weeks for the finale. And then after Top Chef happened, that's when John and I were starting to plan opening our own restaurant, which took a few years, but we finally got there.
So speaking of Top Chef, can you tell us, first of all, how you decided that you actually wanted to compete on the show?
It's funny because Top Chef, like, it's been sort of that thing, like, of course, I don't think I can get on that show because there's like cattle calls and like thousands of people lining up to get into, they have these cattle calls where, oh, Top Chef is casting, you know, and I remember when I was working at Red Light, the server's like, Beverly, you should try out, you'd be great on that show. And I was a sous chef, and I waited in line for 2 hours, you know, had my like picture and everything, and they're like, we'll call you back. They never called me back. I was like, okay, great. I knew it was going to be a long shot, right? So when I was at Aria, I don't know why, but I had this instinct to pick up a phone number that did, like, someone called me that didn't have a number that I recognized. So I picked it up, and it was, hi, you know, this is Top Chef casting crew, and we're going to be in Chicago, and you were on our radar, because at that point I had been an executive chef at Opera. You were on our radar, and we're wondering if you'd be interested in trying out. And so it wasn't like actually like I had physically like went to a call at that point. You know, I was like, you know, what is there to lose? You know, like I really could use this as a move for my career, move for my family. You know, maybe this could be a stepping stone to opening my restaurant. And so, I mean, it was a vigorous process. There's like about 3 different interviews, video interviews. You send in a 25-page application. And, you know, I still the whole time was like, it's a long shot. And I just kept moving up and up in the ranks and made it on.
So you finally made it on the show. Can you tell us what it was like actually being on the show? I know that with a lot of reality TV shows, we probably, as viewers, only see just a small percentage of what really happens.
Yeah.
So, is there really as much drama as there appears sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, of course, you have to always be careful because everything you have on video could be used to spin in a different way, right? What they try to do is, I see it both ways. Like, yes, we all said and did everything that we did, you know, and they kind of sort of like observe like the dynamic of the group. It's kind of like a social experiment, pretty much. And I think I was always self-aware that the cameras were there, but it does break you down when you're constantly in front of a camera. You know, you start to psychologically forget it's there. And you start to say, and you're tired, you're extremely tired. There was several episodes where we stayed up like 38 hours pushing out like, you know, food for like 200 people. You know, it's just, you know, we were subject to a lot of stop and go, stop and wait. So like during that time, you know, things happen, you say things that you don't mean, or there's a lot of, you know, they make available, like if you want to have a beer or something. I was always aware of that, so I always stayed away from like just drinking or trying to get the stress off, because everyone was stressed out. Everyone was nervous. Everyone was there like knowing that if they did bad, it could be bad for their career. It could make them look bad, you know. But there is this like, there is this element where some people forget that they're on camera too. And I think because I was always self-aware, I really tried to put my best foot forward. But sometimes I just acted crazy and dumb because I was so nervous. And, you know, unfortunately they use that against you sometimes, and because you're vulnerable. And I think what I found from that, it was kind of post-traumatic. And I think a lot of people on reality TV have a little bit of this post-traumatic kind of syndrome, because you know, you're not used to seeing yourself, knowing what happened and revisiting it again on TV, and then people reacting to it. So I think that whole element is just kind of brutal. But on the upside, you know, I feel like it's an experience that has shaped me in a lot of ways.
I read in an article that had said that your chef skills may have been downplayed by your peers on the show as well as television viewers. Would you agree with that?
I think that like there was a lot of focus on me doing Asian flavors, and I remember that being an issue. Like, oh, she's doing Asian again, you know, and I just remember that it was very interesting, even in my conversations with people off camera or off other contestants, that they had no idea, like, what kind of food are you doing? What is this? What's Korean fusion? What is this? And there, like, because there was no restaurant doing Korean inspired, or like, so there was a little bit of an attitude towards what I was doing, and sort of like, so that did play a role in the dynamic of the competition. I find that under pressure, like, you know, it's a lot of work. So like, for example, like there was this time where I had to peel and devein like 400 shrimp or something in so many hours, and it just ended up being all I was doing. And it just, you know, if you don't like someone, you can spin it like that's just like you're not a team player, and you know, so it was kind of like, you know, the circumstances created a lot of friction, because they were unrealistic, and I think, like, to be fair to everybody, like, I'm not the most perfect chef, I know that, but I also think that, like, there was a misunderstanding and a dismissiveness to the food style I was doing, because at the time it wasn't, you know, it was seen as different, and sometimes, or like it could be seen as like, oh, she's just doing Asian because that's easy, you know what I mean? But if you're a chef, do you cook, I feel like you cook what feels natural to you, and sometimes it seems like it's easiest to you to cook what comes natural, and that's the food that you enjoy. And I never felt like I had that same animosity towards someone else. Like, I never thought, if Italian is your passion, and you feel like that's your style and that's what you enjoy doing, should I hold it against you that your food tends to be Italian? Or if your culture, like, is a big part of who you are, and your culture is part of how you express your food, why should I hold that against you as being something that's easy? Or, you know, so I think that was one element that people dismissed my talents, because I was just pursuing something that I enjoyed and I loved to do, and I came from that culture. I grew up with Korean, I grew up with Asian style, like Asian flavors, and I could even say I'm not an expert at all Asian flavors. I grew up as a Korean American. I didn't grow up in Korea. I didn't grow up as a Vietnamese, I didn't grow up, there's so many other Asian cultures that I had to learn on my own, but I enjoyed those flavors. So it's still not easy for me, but it's just dismissed because I am Asian American, and that's dismissive, you know. And on the flip side, I could have said, you know, well, you're just doing European food, you're just doing Italian food, you're just doing, you know, and I could have been like that, but that's just not in my nature. You know, I feel like if you're a great chef, it's because you truly believe in what you're doing. It doesn't matter if it's your culture or someone else's culture. It's just the food that you feel like speaks to you.
Yes, I agree. And I know for me, if I go into a restaurant that's Korean, I would hope that the food is being cooked by someone who's, you know, Korean. Same thing for Italian. So besides that, were there any other challenges for you as a contestant?
I think the element of just being a mom, I didn't realize how hard it felt, like the piece of missing my son would just emotionally have a play in how I would perform. And so, you know, when you feel like, you know, I had just, like the hormones playing about being away, and the mom guilt kind of sort of played a role in just feeling a little bit down while I was there. Instead of, a lot of the contestants were single, and they're like, yay, let's party, you know, and let's have fun. And for me, I was like, I can't party. I have a responsibility to my family. I have a responsibility to represent myself really well because my son's gonna see this. I have a responsibility to like not waste the time that I have here. I have to do well because I would rather than just be at home with my son, you know. And so for me, the risk was really high, and to be away from my son for that long, and like that. Luckily, he was young enough where he doesn't remember a lot of it. Like he just remembers a little bit of it, but for me, I think it was hard.
So congratulations on being a finalist on Top Chef and then also winning Last Chance Kitchen. So do you think that your exposure on the show has helped you out in your career, even with the restaurant that you have now?
Yeah, you know, honestly, the short term of Top Chef, which, you know, we didn't get paid while we were gone. So it's not like they pay us royalties for being on TV. It's not like I'm a celebrity and I'm making royalties off of Top Chef. So just take that out of the idea that we're making great money because we're on TV. Because everyone associates great money, TV, right? But I know that Top Chef replays itself. You know, this happened like 4 years ago, 5 years ago even maybe. And it replays itself all around the world. So the long-term effect is that people like still hear about me. They still wonder what I'm doing. They might look me up. They might be like, oh, I want to check out her restaurant in Chicago. So it does have more of a far-reaching effect, but it shouldn't be like anyone's reason. Like a lot of people have like who went on Top Chef. What I noticed after they went on the show, they just played that reality TV card instead of creating a, you know, because if you wait around for that, you know, your career could go down. And I just never thought that was a good plan. I thought the good plan was a means to the end, which is to open my restaurant and create something for people to come to, a restaurant that, you know, I could create jobs, I could create a cuisine, I could express myself and work with my husband and build a business, make a living. And so it was a means to an end for me, and it did have one part of the pie of helping us get open, but like not like in the immediate, like it's not like we got an invest. And also a lot of the investors that called me from that immediate show were really not in line with our branding. Like, so they might be like, I saw you at Top Chef, I want you to do a Korean ramen shop. I'm like, I don't really want to do a Korean ramen shop, you know? Or they might say like, I want pork belly buns, like do something with pork belly buns. I'm like, that's already been done. Why would I want to do something that's already been done, you know? And it's like these investors weren't the right investors for me. And so like after 2 years of looking for the right investor, we just decided to take a loan from the bank. My dad signed his house away, and we took a risk. And it's paid off, but we're complete sole owners, me and my husband. And so we make all the decisions. We've done a lot of things from scratch. We opened on a $200,000 budget, which is unheard of. Like most restaurants open on $600,000, $400,000 or more. And it took emotionally, it just took a lot for me to know that like my dad's retirement money was included in this and all the risks at hand if I fail. And but it was the only thing that like I knew I had control over. So that's how we did it. That's how we opened Parachute.
So can you tell us about that first year of starting a new business and all of the challenges that you faced and anything that you might have done differently?
Of course, like in retrospect, if we had known how successful we were, we would have like maybe started with better equipment and better things like that. But our budget was so small. We had the scrappiest stuff. Like we had all this used equipment that like would go up into flames, like and like I just look back on the first days. We used a lot of like whatever scrappy equipment we could do. Everything was on scraps, like not quality, like equipment, but the food was quality. As long as the food came out as quality, that was important to us. But I was using my home rice cooker from home, like stuff like that, And I was thinking like if I could just make enough bibimbaps out of this, little rice cooker, and it ended up like in 2 weeks, like we outgrew a lot of our equipment. So, but we didn't know. I know that like in my experience, a lot of restaurants who overdo it in the beginning, they end up owing a lot of money. I mean, I still have a bank loan that I have to pay off for another 4 years, and if you don't hit your numbers, I mean, the worst case, your mind goes to the worst case scenario is bankruptcy, and you don't get a chance to do it again. So I was trying to really avoid doing anything that would put us in some kind of like, so I guess in retrospect, I feel like we did the right things because I had seen so many failures before. I had worked through so many restaurants that didn't think through all these little things, and we created a restaurant. If the economy slammed, John and I could still run the restaurant because you never can control. We lived through 2009. Everybody remembers 2009 so when I was working as an executive chef at Opera, they cut all the salaries by 10%. I lost my sous chef, and they never replaced the sous chef. I worked like literally like a month and a half, 9 to 1 with no day off, and I was the only restaurant in that group to turn a profit, and the only way was by like really killing myself. And but I realized that this restaurant was so big, that's why I killed myself. If I create a restaurant that was manageable, no matter what, I wouldn't kill myself. So we're closed Sundays and Mondays, so that prevents anyone from working 7 days, even if we're down-staffed, even if we don't have enough staff. So I created something that could never fail. But the thing is, the rewards is smaller. Smaller is slower, but it's more sure, and it's not going to go out of business. So that's kind of like my plan. So if I had all the money in the world, of course I would have had the best equipment, because in the long run, that creates a better morale for your kitchen. You're not wasting time, things taking longer because you don't have the right equipment or setups. So I would have done some things differently, but I think because we had such a low budget, came creativity, came a je ne sais quoi, something very special about at Parachute, and I call it soul. Like you can't buy soul; it comes from within, and it comes from a true artist. And everyone starts from somewhere. You see it in every great artist. They started from the bottom up, right? That was our like with the coming from the bottom up. That was our song because we always knew where we came from, and I think that keeps us really humble. And as we move forward, of course, we want to do bigger, better things. But how you still have this little bit of fear of when if 2009 happens again, right? So you want to be as safe as you can as you make every step and decision on the way.
So speaking of challenges such as the long hours that you had to endure within the industry, there was an article that you had written recently, and it was titled "The Double Standard Women Deal With in Restaurant Kitchens." And this is an excerpt from that article. Toughness is needed to be a head chef of any establishment, whether you're a man or a woman. But in my experience as a woman in leadership, it may come with a double standard. Can you elaborate on what you wrote in this article?
Yeah, just in general, being a head chef of a restaurant requires stamina. I mean, long hours, standing on your feet next to hot stoves. I mean, this is just physically one of the worst, like environmentally, not the best, safest environment. I mean, you're just working 130 degrees in the summer. I mean, no matter how good your fan system works, like the stoves are flaring. There's no way around it. You can't sit down and cut vegetables. Like it's a standing environment. You stand on your feet for 15 hours a day. I've seen men cry because it's just so painful. They're so tired. You know, the stamina it takes to be at work the same day, next day, and hit all your deadlines of being ready on service. I mean, at this level of cooking, like a high level of cooking, you really do care about what you're putting out, and you're not going to serve bad food. And so that requires a lot of time and labor. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of delegating, a lot of managerial skills. And so I think no matter what, man or woman, being a head chef is like, if you could be a chef, you're a badass, you know? Mm-hmm. The thing is with, sometimes I feel like it was easier if a man would just say it, like, hey, peel these carrots. Let's do this over. It's just so direct and plain as black and white, peel these carrots. Whereas, like, if I would say the same thing, do that sober, this is not right, peel these carrots. They'd be like, well, you know, you didn't tell me to do it like this. And it's just like the added, like, having to explain yourself in a way that men oftentimes don't have to, because it's not maybe socialized into them. And I don't blame anyone for it. It's just like a socialized thing that women are not used to being direct. We're used to being like, hello. Oh. And I had this conversation with another woman chef. It's like, have you noticed that women like chuckle on the phone, like, hi. Or I say I'm sorry, even though I don't know why I say I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. But I'm sorry. You know, and it's just, we have these kind of ways to soften the message, because ultimately it's not in the cultures that we live in or that we grow up to be aggressive or assertive. Or it's even just being assertive can be taken as being aggressive. And it's not desirable to be an aggressive woman, you know. And so just to be assertive, we have to kind of maneuver how we say things in a way that's not offensive. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, I feel like women have to be more conscious of it. I mean, think about like even just being presentable. Women have to work so much harder to be presentable. We have to get up, do our hair, put our makeup, and then we're presentable, right? I mean, to a lot of people. But why do we have these double standards? You know, why, you know, so I just feel like it's just, as a woman, what I've noticed is, and people will, like, I saw a comment in the Eater about that article, well, maybe you were being a bitch. Because what I was saying in the article was, when I become the new executive chef, I was like, okay, well, now that I'm the head chef in this role, I really do think I can improve the sanitation of this restaurant. I think we can be cleaner, neater. I want to have higher standards. And I expected, you know, I added maybe just like, hey, I want you to do this, you know, do this. It's probably like more probably concern that they've ever heard on cleanliness and they've heard before, because the other chef would kind of gloss over, you know, everything's great, you know, wonderful, like, and it was really about, it was more about like what I saw is that he had a lot of charisma, but when he came to the product of like how the kitchen looked, I felt like it was not up to my standards. So I wanted to increase the standards, and not ever was I in a bad way. Like I would always say, can you please do this, you know, please do this. And it was never like, you know, so-and-so, you suck at this. You know, it would never come out like that. It would come out in just a very normal way. And then next week, like the second week I started being an executive chef, this general manager said that the kitchen wanted to meet with me, and they were complaining how I was not nice enough, and again, remember, kitchens are badass places. You're supposed to be a badass. And I was like, wait, I'm supposed to be a badass, you know? They're telling me I can't be a badass. And they're telling me that I buy them sandwiches and snacks, and I'm always thinking about them. And the other chef would never like care less if they even ate, you know? Like I would like, hey, you guys, I'm gonna go to Papa's. Do you want a shake or something? I would just surprise them one day, you know, or it was thoughtful, you know, and thoughtful means I'm also thinking about other things. And they were saying that my delivery was mean, and I was really taking it to heart. I was like, maybe I am. Then I thought about it. I was like, no, no. They can't handle a woman telling them what to do. That's how I felt. And, you know, I took it into consideration, but, you know, ultimately I left there because, you know, I didn't have the support even from the management, you know, so I think, you know, the management should have been like, you know what, she's the chef. Yeah, it wasn't clean enough, or she's new, and I'll let her know that you're concerned about how she's delivering it, but, you know, this is the new standards or something, or supporting me, you know, but I think, again, it's double standard, you know. The former chef, even though she was a woman, she wasn't supporting me because she was kind of dulled by the other chef. She was kind of doted on, and I didn't give her the same attention, you know. So it's just very interesting, like when people don't get the attention or feel like they're doted on, they don't feel like, as a woman, it's like you have to make people feel like, I don't know how to explain this, but like just there's an added element before you say and speak instead of just saying directly. Because if you just say it directly, you get poor results. And so I've learned that it's just not easy.
So is there anything that you think could change within the industry to help overcome this problem?
I just think more representation of women in general, like it could be more of a social norm for women to be direct and to, you know, I think directness is important as a leader, you know, and beating around the bush is not important, you know, it's not being a good leader. And if we socialize women to beat around the bush, we're not socializing them, we're socializing in a bad way, you know, and I think in an ineffective way, and it's not giving equal chances to, I think everybody should have social graces. Let's just put it that way. I think it's important even for a man to think about how they're gonna say and talk to an employee about something, right? You still wanna have your please and thank yous, and you still, you know, but there's sometimes where in a restaurant, you don't have even time to say please and thank you, it's inferred, but it's just the way you say it. You don't have to say, you're an idiot, you know? You could say, hey, do that over, that's not acceptable, like, that's not the correct way I showed you, right? There's, I think we can all, like, benefit from having a standard that's correct and straightforward. What I feel like more women representation, encouraging women to really, I think management needs to be aware of these issues so that we're supportive of women in roles and in leadership. And I think I think it just will take a lot of time for the generations where you see more. I think it's just indoctrinated so deep. It's not like something that you could switch off and turn off right away. It's kind of deeply rooted in our society. Like I say, it's even like the way we answer the phone. Like, why do we chuckle? Why do women chuckle? It's because it's psychological that we don't want to be offensive, right? And it's cultural, you know. And I, even as a Korean, when I went to a Korean church growing up, and if we were too loud, the gentlemen's like in the room would be, "Hey, you're too loud," but like because we're women, like, and women are taught to cover their mouth, you know, when they're like talking or laughing. So it's all these things of trying to like not be invasive, right? And it's a lot of cultures, not just American. It's like a combination. For me, it's like the worst of like Korean machoism, and I feel like in America, there's still, in the restaurant field, there's still inequities. It's still like, as I was rising to the ranks, it was still kind of a macho kitchen. You know, a lot of locker room talk, a lot of you know, it just, I think, you know, women with our kind of nature, it's intimidating to be a leader. But I think the more we see women in the position, being direct, being able to take the leadership roles, it softens that hesitation and it feels normal. And once it feels normal, nobody's, like, from the receiver and the person giving the information, it won't be any different. So I think it's just gonna take some time, but it's gonna take pioneers of women to go through what I went through. Pioneers of women to not give up, to like keep going on even though it's hard, even though things aren't fair, even though things aren't in your corner, even though it's not like stacked up against you to succeed. But if you're the pioneer, you're gonna help generations in the future succeed and be fair. So that's kind of how I feel.
So you faced many challenges in your career as a chef, and then you obviously had challenges when starting up a brand new business. So what is in store for you in terms of the future, the restaurant, yourself, other endeavors?
You know, I feel like I'm really proud of having a business to afford like a little microeconomy. We have people, I'm employing 25 people now. We started with, including me and my husband, it was 7 people. And we did you know, I feel really proud that we created jobs. And I feel like these people now that have been with us for 3 years, I would like to give them more opportunities if we grow more. So I would love to create another opportunity for them, whether it's opening like a new restaurant, so that they can grow into a bigger position, maybe run 2 restaurants. There's more money around, and so until then, like, you know, my commitment is to put out the great food every day at Parachute. Keep, you know, I keep my commitment to being a better employer to them, and I have my commitment to my community here, you know, in Chicago, and you know, so I'm not used to like speaking, so that's why I asked her to do a Q&A, you know, because it's actually kind of stressful for me, like to like, you know, like it's not what I'm trained to do, but I realize how important it is to speak out and share these stories, because when we share these stories, it helps empower you and it helps empower other people to have, oh wow, I'm not the only one going through this, or wow, I never saw it that way, I'm gonna treat this other person better now, you know, like. I feel like I have kind of a commitment to speaking out about these issues too, alongside running a restaurant. So, and then alongside being a mother to 2 children, and so I have a lot of responsibilities.
Well, I know, you know, that you were a little bit nervous about this, but thank you so much for coming, joining us, and sharing your experience with us today. So we'll now open it up if anyone has any questions.
Oh, I see you here.
Yeah, my name is Lucy. I just want to say I love Parachute, and so did my vegetarian friends, who I was like, we're going to an Asian restaurant, and she's vegetarian, so she's not going to eat the pork, but she loved it. I was wondering if you could share like a nightmare customer story, kind of an opposite Yelp review, very anonymous. I'm just curious. At Parachute.
Yeah,
and
I
was also. Yeah, maybe that's easy.
Wow, I feel like with the 1,000 of diners that we serve, there's like a 1% population that's very weird, you know, and you know, customers not always right? We've had a lot of those. The worst is when people do this little blackmail thing. They're like, I had this dish and just wasn't up to my standards, and this was and like didn't like it. If you don't do something for me, I'm gonna go on Yelp. And I was like, I responded to that woman. I was like, kindly, well, please tell me why. There was a manager there. There was many opportunities. The service checked in with you. What about that experience? We could have easily like sent you a dish that you did like. I'm so sorry that it was too spicy for you. Because all those dishes, you said you didn't like spice, but all those dishes that you picked were spicy. So if you had just let us know, like what dish, we would have steered you in a better direction. I'm so sorry. And she's like, well, I just didn't want to be that customer. I was like, well, you are being that customer. You know, in my mind, it's like she's putting this as a threat. Like, if you don't do something for me, I am going to go on Yelp. And with all those customers, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do a full refund because I really don't want your money. You know, honestly, I'm okay with you not coming back because they don't have the right perspective. You know, and I think when you invite people, like enable people with that kind of behavior, I feel like you're just opening a hole. So we've had times where these like they have unreasonable demands and people are exaggerating. There was one person who so normally we have like an hour and a half or two tops because that's the average time that people eat and get up, maybe an hour and 45 minutes. This table was a two-top, and they stayed for 3.5 hours, right? There was a table, we tried the whole time, like redoing the books, running, and then finally it got to the point where this one table was about to wait on threshold of 30 minutes. This table, every time they got their food, they wouldn't eat it. They would just talk and talk and talk. It would go cold. And then like we finally gave them the dessert and they were on their dessert, they didn't even touch the dessert for 30 minutes. So our general manager was like, we were more than happy to like, if you could just move, like we were more than happy to buy you a round of drinks, first of all. And we're so sorry we have to ask you to get up, but could you please enjoy your dessert? Because we do have a reservation at this table. And she did do that. But then she sent this like email that was just so mad. She was so angry. She's like, I feel so insulted at a restaurant that has a Michelin star that I was asked to get up. And it took us like 3 or 4 days to think about it. I was like, let me get back to her. But in that time, she posted on Yelp like a 1-star review, and her information was incorrect. Like she said, I waited, like I got there at this time. It was just completely incorrect. And the thing with Yelp, you can't argue with an idiot. So like if you start a conversation like, no, that's not the truth, this is what really happened, then they're just gonna go back and say, no, but this is it. And it's a waste of time for us. So Yelp is one of those things that we don't even respond to because the majority of Yelp reviews, they're people that just wanna say something. There was another time where I had a friend, and I have a 6-month baby at home, and so when my first son was like 2 months old, I had him in a Moby wrap, and it's a kind of a tight squeeze, at Parachute. It's only 1,500 square feet, and one of my friends was visiting, and I stopped by that table to say hi. The next day, I see a Yelp review. I had the worst experience because the owner proceeded to knock me many times with her baby. And she had her baby in a wrap, and she kept bumping into me, and I couldn't use my left arm for my utensil. So I I found out his phone number and I called him. And I said, excuse me, Mr. So-and-so, I'm so sorry I kept bumping into you. You know, I wish you had let me know, and I'm so sorry. You know, I didn't realize I was doing that to you. He was just like, oh, like I don't think he expected me to call.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm so sorry, you know, like I understand, like I'm a working mom, and you know the baby's like 2 months old, and so I have to walk around with a wrap. I'm so sorry, my friend was there, and I wish I had known. I'm so sorry. And I was like, can I do anything for you? Can I just, sounded like you weren't happy with these dishes. Can I comp you those dishes, or can I send you a gift certificate? He's like, oh, well, I'm not even in the city, so I don't need a gift certificate. I was like, okay, can I comp these dishes for you? He's like, well, like I couldn't do anything to make him happy. And he's just like, well, I was just commenting on that. I didn't deem you on the service for that. I just had to mention it. I was like, okay, you know, in truth, like, it really, like, it hurts that things like that happen, but it does happen all the time. People are so unreasonable sometimes, but I always feel like, I always tell the guys to be the kinder person, the bigger person, and always be like, what can we do to make you happy? And if we can't do anything to make you happy, then what can we do? If you're complaining but we can't help you, then are you just complaining to complain? If you're complaining to actually create a solution, you know, then I feel like it's a true complaint. If it's a complaint just to vent and be heard, and then it's just someone who's kind of narcissistic, you know? And so I think every business, like, has those moments and has those customers, and luckily they're just a small percentage, but yeah, I do have those experiences, and unfortunately, but I try really hard to use it as a learning tool of patience and understanding and compassion and being the bigger person always.
Are there any other questions?
So how do you keep people motivated in a time of resource constraints? Asking for a friend.
Culture. Your culture is so important, because you can't pay for culture. You can't pay for soul. You can't, so it's literally like, so we were talking about like how important it is to say thank you. Thank you, you did an amazing job. You know, like acknowledging people for their hard work, because that costs nothing. You know, when your resources are thin, we bend over backwards to, if they have a request off, like we try to cover it somehow, unless there's no coverage. Like we try to consider their family, what they're going through, like we acknowledge, you know, like the little things that make them happy, like their birthdays, you know, or like little acknowledgements go a long way. We have this thing where eye contact. Eye contact is so important. If someone doesn't look good, you know, you should check in, you know, like don't let that get too far from you, you know, like how are you doing? Like what can I do to help you today? You know, random acts of kindness, you know, just like being thoughtful of people's schedules, you know, like it's like really respecting people's schedules, I feel like is really important when your resources are thin. And if you are asking them to do something for you as a favor, trying to get back into them, you know, give it back to them in another way. Like just like some team outings are really great. Like so, we did this event at rock climbing in Avondale, because it's in our neighborhood, and we did a team build. And I felt like immediately, like we worked out these problems. I mean, it was a little bit of resource that we had to pay for a big effect. You know, we actually bonded. We had, you know, we had kind of saw each other outside of work, and it kind of helped us appreciate each other's uniqueness and what we brought to the table. And I think too, like, being flexible and open-minded and listening. So those are kind of my things, like culture, like ingraining the culture, like going back to your mission statement. What is our mission statement? Going back to like every decision like comes back to your mission statement. Like, you know, if this equals good food, good service, good culture, then I'm for it. You know, and if it goes against that mission statement, that it makes it easier to make decisions all across the board and have your team on board with you. And yeah, and I think like communication more than anything is very important these days. Like like people want to be heard. They want to have it a way that they can express themselves and be a part of the change, of like positive change. And so like how do you do that without too much chaos, right? Because like if everyone's telling you what to do, then you know it's chaos. But you have to have outlets for them to like give an opportunity to say something. And so I think it's really about your culture is important.
Anyone else?
So I just had a question about how is it different for you now as the business owner and not, sort of the creative executive chef? Do you find yourself spending more time on the business area rather than the cooking part of your
Yes.
job?
So I was like, to put it really simply, to be like, first half of my career was working hard, not smart, just working hard. Like, peel these things in this amount of time. There's no thought to it. You just have to do it really fast. And it's a physical act. It's skill, like crafts. And like, you're not supposed to question the chef. You're not supposed to think of a better way to do it. You only do it the way that you're taught. Now that like I'm in the flip side, the owner, I have to think smarter, not harder, because I have to think about with the resources I have, how can I get this product so that everybody's happy and we're still healthy and work balance, and then we still have this quality product. So I have to think about how to be smarter, and it takes a lot of teamwork. And for me, it's not then about how fast I can do something. It's how I can empower everybody to work efficiently, how I can empower everyone to work together, like, so we can hit these goals together. And it takes a lot more executive functioning, and it takes a lot more thoughtfulness, and it takes a lot more organization versus just creating, making. I've been using a lot more Excel sheets. Like my laptop is about to break down because I use it so much. But I feel like by working smarter, I can create, like even 1% of sale creates like this much more, right? Like when you're dealing with budgets, right? So, it's analyzing like where the money's going and not wasting it. So like we cut out the fat where it's wasted and put it to where it's important. And I feel like that's, as a business owner, where I'm putting my time, like for me, like it's important, this is important to me. So like choosing, like I also, like we're all like, our resources are time, right? So we get so many charity requests, so many event requests, we can't do it all without, and run our business. So we have to choose the things that are important to us. And that takes thoughtfulness and like, does this line up to our branding? Does this line up to our mission statement? Constantly comparing and then having to make a decision and saying no or yes. So I feel like almost like I have to be like the vision for the restaurant and keep the vision alive, because you can get, someone needs to keep an eye out for that. Like, are we progressing? Is this like, who's looking out for the customer feedback? Who's looking out for the employee morale? Being a chef in a kitchen, if you're stuck in a kitchen, you can't think about that per se. But I can see every blind spot in our business, and I analyze every blind spot every week. And I always create like better, I try to every week improve the business step by step.
Well, thank you again for joining us today.
Oh, okay. I thought you were at the table getting a reservation. I was like,
Oh, that's in a way that's helpful.
Okay, yeah, that's what I usually.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for doing this. Oh, you want me to? Yeah.
He wants to open